Hello, my name is Diana, and in this video I'm going to introduce 4 tips which will help you speak English better, or if you don't speak English yet, they will help you start to speak English finally and hopefully. So, tip number 1, understand that making mistakes is okay. Why? Reason number 1, almost everybody makes them. Trust me, I have met a lot of native speakers. I constantly meet people who have studied at top universities. I have studied in the UK for a year. I listen to audiobooks and native speakers making speeches, seminars, you name it. And you know what? They all make mistakes. They don't use the first conditional right, comparatives, irregular verbs. I make mistakes. So it's really okay. Point number 2 is you are, which is obvious, you are not the native speaker of the language. You are not born into the language. Remember when you first, well, maybe you don't, your parents remember when you first started learning your own language. You were making mistakes, you were making funny mistakes, weren't you? And it was okay, because this is a natural process. And point number 3, unfortunately, there are some people and even English teachers, and I used to be one, and I'm really sorry about it, who really react badly when you make mistakes, like, oh my god, how could you do this? And it makes you feel bad, but you know what? It's their problem, not yours. Most of the people who react like this, they are probably insecure themselves, and they think that the only way of being the person they want to be is not allowing any mistakes at all. Sometimes these people are just perfectionists, or there are some other reasons. But in any case, it's not your problem, and you really shouldn't allow these sort of feedbacks stop you from speaking English. Tip number 2, practice makes perfect. Some people think that if they read a lot of books, or they learn the rules and they do listenings, then one day they will open their mouth and magically flawless English without any mistakes will just come out of their mouth. This is, of course, impossible. This is not true. This will never happen unless you're some special sort of genius. I often compare learning a language to mastering a sport, or developing a muscle, or learning a new dance move. If you go back and just remember how you mastered any sort of sport, or how you created your magnificent body with great muscles, or how you learned to dance a specific type of dance, you will realize that at first, when you were trying to, you were probably not managing, you were making a lot of mistakes, but you would go to certain classes several times a week for a certain amount of time, or you would go to gym, and eventually, gradually, you started to manage it. Well, language is the same. You need to practice it to make it better. When you do some exercises, maybe physical exercises, first time you try it, it's really hard, but as you keep doing it, it's getting better and better and better, and the same thing is going to happen to your English, I promise. And one way for doing this is finding a speaking club, or starting a club of your own, just asking some people, some friends to come around and speak. Or you can agree with some of your family members who also speak English, or with some friends, that whenever you meet, or on certain days of the week, you only speak English, and you don't don't correct mistakes or you don't pay much attention to it. You just try to communicate. You just try to practice. And here at Study for Success, we're planning to have Saturday nights for speaking, where we are going to take certain topics and we're going to discuss and we're going to practice our English in a less formal environment. Tip number 3 is you need to learn certain techniques to improve your fluency. So learn techniques to improve your fluency. Which are these techniques? Technique number 1, lower your standards. Now I know this doesn't sound very good, because in your everyday life, in your morals, you should never lower your standards. But when it comes to speaking English, here's what happens. You've been speaking your mother tongue for quite a lot of time, and you have developed it, and you reach a certain level where you use complex grammar and vocabulary, and you can express your thoughts beautifully. And when you start speaking English, you want to jump immediately to that level, which is unfortunately not possible. So what happens? You try to express your thoughts in English as you would in your native language, and you just get stuck because you don't know the words yet, don't know the structures yet. And you get stuck, you don't speak. But if you really want to communicate, which should be your goal eventually, you just need to lower your standards and use words which are simple structures, maybe not very beautiful, not as beautiful as your mother tongue would be, but you still communicate. So you say it in a simple way, but you say it. Technique number 2 is change your sentence. If, for example, you don't know a word, you don't get stuck. You just change your sentence and use synonyms, so you don't really need to use this word, or you use another word instead of it. For example, if you want to say thing X really influenced thing Y, you don't know the word influence, you can change it. You can say thing X had a big effect on thing Y, or thing X was important for thing Y, or thing X changed thing Y, or thing Y was different or would be different, which is a more complex structure, without thing X. Okay? Tip point 3, technique number 3, is explain the word. Just describe it. If you don't know the word bench, for example, you can say, well, the chair on which you sit in a park. And finally, mime it. If you don't know something, use your body language. They say body language makes about 60% of our communication, so words make only 40% of our communication. Our body language makes 60%. So intonation, emotions, gesture, it all helps. And finally, tip number 4 is don't be nervous. It has happened to me. I'm sure you've noticed that too. In some situations, you speak English, you speak just fine, your language is great, and then in a different situation with different people, you get stuck, you make terrible mistakes, and you just listen to yourself like, gosh, is that even me? I don't make these mistakes. Or you get stuck, and it seems like your tongue doesn't move, you can't really speak. So how to deal with this? The first and foremost thing I always recommend for dealing with stress is just breathing. Deep breath is what really helps. Point number 2, if say you're going to have a presentation, or you're going to have a meeting, or you're going to have a stand-up during which you will have to speak, and you already know what you will say, you can prepare. You can do your homework. You can write down the text or the sentences that you want to say. And at this stage, if you don't remember any words, you can use the techniques I've mentioned earlier, or you can quickly check the word in the dictionary. And point number 3, which I actually borrowed from Armine Mugarchan, a great coach who I definitely recommend reaching for, is 3 steps for dealing with stress. So if you say you're going to have a meeting and you're really nervous and you think like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail, I'm not gonna be able to speak, I'm gonna be embarrassed, everybody's gonna laugh at me and this sort of stuff, what you do, first thing, you look at the evidence. You look at facts. So the facts are, you've studied English for a while and you were able to speak English during your English classes. Or you have spoken English before in a different situation, it was just fine. Or if you have prepared, you say, hey, I've prepared, I have my text, this is the evidence. Point number 2, you change this negative approach to positive. Instead of visualizing yourself standing there, not being able to say anything and being embarrassed, you picture this wonderful image of you standing or sitting there, speaking English without any problems, everybody looking at you and admiring you and thinking, gosh, this person really can speak English. And you just imagine how you really feel good and confident. And point number 3 is you have your plan B. So you go there, you don't manage to say anything. What happens? Well, you ask somebody else to say for you. If you have your text prepared, you read your text, and or you just show it. Say you're a developer and you need to show the customer your product. You just you just click on the link and you go to this place and to this place, and you just show how the functionality works. So these were the 4 tips. Tip number 1 is it's okay to make mistakes. Tip number 2, practice makes perfect. Tip number 3, use techniques to increase your fluency. And tip number 4, don't be nervous. I really hope that this will help you improve your English, your spoken English. And please let me know which of these 4 tips you find most useful, and also what are some situations in which you need to speak English and you find it difficult. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in my next video.